Sri Anandamayi Ma, a great yogi, a great saint, a devotee, and incarnation of the Divine Mother. Sri Anandamayi Ma was a spiritual personality from East Bengal. Swami Shivananda described her as the most perfect flower the Indian soil has produced. Precognition, healing and other miracles were attributed to her by her followers. Nirmala Sundari was born on 30 April 1896 to Bipin Bihari Bhattacharya and Mokshada Sundari Devi in Kheora, Brahmanbaria district, British India, in what is now Bangladesh. Her father, originally from Vidyakut in Tripura, was a Vaishnavite singer known for his devotion. He had a detached persona. They lived in poverty and lost many children in their infancy. Nirmala attended the village school for approximately 2 years. Although her teachers were pleased with her ability, her family thought she was dull-minded because of her indifference and constantly happy demeanor. When her mother once fell seriously ill, relatives remarked with puzzlement about the child remaining apparently unaffected. In 1908, at the age of 13, in keeping with the rural custom at the time, she was married to Ramani Mohan Chakrabarti of Vikramapura, whom she would later rename Bholanath. She spent 5 years after her marriage at her brother-in-law's home, where she was in a withdrawn meditative state much of the time. It was here that a devout neighbor considered insane, Harakuma, developed a habit of addressing her as Ma, and prostrated before her morning and evening in reverence. At the age of 15, while sitting by a lake in Bajitpur, Nirmala had the inspiration to inquire as to what it would be like to be a religious aspirant or sadhak. She then began what she would later describe as a game of investigating the path of the sadhak. When Nirmala would sit for worship, she would witness her body perform yogic asana and mudras which were unknown to her and Romani. She described these forms as arising automatically as in the manner of factory machinery. To the puzzlement of those around her, while in Shahbag she became unable to feed herself. She would find that she could not bring her hand to carry food to her mouth. Consequently, Bholenath or female renunciates used to feed her in the manner of an infant child. Unable to comprehend the meaning and origin of Nirmala's religious practices at the time, Romani consulted priests, exorcists and medical doctors about Nirmala's condition, until a medical doctor reassured him that she was not insane. According to what she later related to devotees, after completing her domestic chores and cooking, Nirmala would withdraw into her religious practices, where she felt there was a distinct inner guide instructing her in which religious actions to perform. When she would pose questions about the religious actions, instantly an answer would appear. She once asked who was my guide, on which the instant response came, your Shakti. The voice then prohibited her from paying obeisance to anyone in the customary or religious Hindu manner, by bowing or touching an elder's feet. This would cause offense to her orthodox father when he visited her. However, as she was observing strict silence or mourn, she was unable to explain the significance to him at the time. Nirmala was also until then in the habit of bowing to the forms that surrounded her as manifestations of God. When she questioned the rule against her paying such obeisance, the voice responded, to whom do you want to make obeisance? You yourself are everything. At this point she came to realize her identity with the physical universe. When Nirmala was about 17, she went to live with her husband in Ashtagram. In 1918, she moved to Bajitpur, where she stayed until 1924. It was a celibate marriage. Whenever thoughts of sexuality occurred to Ramani, Nirmala's body would take on the qualities of death. On the full moon night of August 1922, at midnight, 26-year-old Nirmala enacted her own spiritual initiation. She explained that the ceremony and its rites were being revealed to her spontaneously as and when they were called for. She later stated, "As the master, I revealed the mantra, as the disciple, I accepted it and started to recite it." Nirmala moved to Shahbag with her husband in 1924, where he had been appointed caretaker of the gardens of the Nawab of Dhaka. During this period, Nirmala went into ecstasies at Kirtan in a manner similar to that of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nirmala continued to perform household tasks, and also continued to practice silence, and was in a withdrawn state of ecstasy much of the time. These states began to interfere with her daily work. In 1926, she set up a Kali temple in the Siddheshwari area and devoted herself to spiritual practices. Nirmala underwent a mystic experience while praying in the temple one day. In a deep meditative state, she held difficult yogic positions for long periods and spontaneously formed complex tantric hand positions and gestures. During the time in Shahbag, more and more people began to be drawn to what they saw to be a living embodiment of the divine. Jyotish Chandra Rai, known as Bhaiji, was an early and close disciple. He was the first to suggest that Nirmala be called Anandamayi Ma, meaning joy-permeated mother, or bliss-permeated mother. He was chiefly responsible for the first ashram built for Anandamayi Ma in 1929 at Ramna, within the precinct of the Ramna Kali Mandir. Scholars were attracted to Anandamayi Ma's spirituality and teaching, though she called herself a little unlettered child. In 1932, Anandamayi Ma moved to Dehradun with her husband. From that time, until her death in 1982, she traveled across the subcontinent, never staying more than 2 weeks in the same place. She quotes, "As you love your own body, so regard everyone as equal to your own body." When the supreme experience supervenes, everyone's service is revealed as one's own service. Call it a bird, an insect, an animal or a man, call it by any name you please, one serves one's own self in every one of them. Anandamayi Ma never prepared discourses, wrote down, or revised what she had said. A central theme of her teaching is, the supreme calling of every human being is to aspire to self-realization. All other obligations are secondary, and only actions that kindle man's divine nature are worthy of the name of actions. However, she did not ask everyone to become a renunciate. Everyone is right from his own standpoint, she would say. She did not give formal initiations and refused to be called a guru, as she maintained that all paths are my paths, and kept saying, "I have no particular path." She did not advocate the same method for all. How can one impose limitations on the infinite by declaring this is the only path? That's why there are so many different religions and sects. Because through every one of them he gives himself to himself, so that each person may advance according to his inborn nature. As she herself has said, all forms of sadhana, known and unknown, just occurred to her in the form of a leela or a play, without any conscious effort on her part. Thus her sadhana cannot be slotted into a specific area, for to do so would mean that she was somehow limited to that area and her mastery was also limited. Everyone was welcome and she was equally at ease while giving advices to all practitioners of different faiths. Even now, the Muslim population of Khaura still refer to her as our own Ma. She taught how to live a God-centered life in the world, and she provided the living inspiration to enable thousands to aspire to this most noble ideal. She also advocated spiritual equality for women. For example, she opened up the sacred thread ritual to women, which had been performed by men only for centuries. Her style of teaching included jokes, songs and instructions on everyday life along with long discourses, meditation and reading of scriptures. Ma often described her presence as that of an infant child. She described that her enlightened state preceded and was present at her birth. However, she would usually refuse to give prophecies, describing them as sansaric or worldly, and instead usually request the questioner to take to a religious life or else take on a personal quest for God or truth. Other devotees noted that when asked who she was, she responded that because she had no aham buddhi, which means literal existence experience of I am, she could not say who or what she was, therefore was whatever the questioner thought she was. She denied having any personal mission or motives, stating she traveled about on intuition or wherever devotees invited her. When people would ask her questions, she either explained that the answer would come according to intuition. She would compare her body to a musical instrument such as a drum or bell, stating, "As you play the instrument, so shall you hear." When people argued with what she said or asked questions with an ulterior motive, she would remain silent. However, she also explained to devotees that all her actions, insights and revelations had been for you all. Her public utterances seem to teach a kind of absolute theism, which is that only God exists, that all names and forms are His names and forms. Wahi hai, He only is. That He is identical with the supreme essence of everything or Atma. She often said, exposition of God is the only exposition, everything else is futility and pain. Anandamayi stated that God was self-revealed, and that religious practices were only a means to remove the veil of ignorance that concealed Him from the devotee. She explained that the way to realize God was to become restless for Him. She accepted traditional modes of worship as well as philosophical inquiry. She encouraged people to follow their gurus, religions, instructions, or else to take whichever name of God was most appealing to their hearts and mind and to call out to Him with it constantly and unceasingly. She advised a firm adherence to truth, saying that by doing so everything could be obtained on the spiritual path. She also advised those that chose a path or life of service that they should do so with the idea that it was God they were serving, or else they could fall prey to egoism. She often said, to find yourself is to find God, and to find God is to find yourself. Ma always showed an outward reverence for ascetics, renunciants and devotees who had renounced the worldly life and devoted their lives to God. She did not, however, ask everyone to become a renunciate, and instructed householders that they could draw close to God while maintaining a family life, by seeing God's presence in their family members and serving Him in that manner, and by maintaining the attitude of a manager rather than a master. She often requested all householders set aside a fixed daily time reserved exclusively for divine contemplation, even if for only 5 or 15 minutes to start. Her teachings was totally centered to God or self. She won't waste time in less important things. But divine beings also come and go but physically. Hence, the time came for her to leave the body. She died in the eyes of people on 27 August 1982 in Dehradun, and subsequently on 29 August 1982, she was given Samadhi in the courtyard of her Kankal ashram, situated in Haridwar in North India. A shrine was later erected over the Samadhi, now known as The Ananda Jyoti Peetham. She was an embodiment of love. She blessed everyone by being physically present here. We bow down to this Divine Mother.